Welcome back to the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Coates. Join me along with industry leaders and friends on a quest to get more people through the gym door and eating and living healthier. Join me where evidence meets empathy while rejecting fitness industry fads and extremism. Let's begin. Dr. Mike Israetel, it's been a while. It's amazing to have you back. PhD of Sport Physiology, co-founder Renaissance Periodization, and husband to the great Dr. Crystal Guevara, who was on recently talking about Ozempic. It's great to have you back.
It's great to be on, man. Thank you so much for having me back.
Cool. Let's dive right in. You have been talking a ton about artificial intelligence on your media, especially on your Twitter. It's fun to follow. Does artificial intelligence have the potential to improve society's health and fitness?
Yes, by an amount that is difficult to imagine, at least in the direct sense of most of us aren't smart enough to imagine how much better things can get. Because AI is on track to become smarter than us. And once it's smarter than us, it can do incredible things. And even on its way up to being as smart as us, it can help us with tons and tons of stuff. I mean, drug development is a really big thing. Advanced surgical techniques is a really big thing. Supplements and all kinds of stuff that you can optimize with AI. Individual responses and individual genetic stuff, never mind genetic engineering, which is inevitable. And even AI can help in the coaching process and in informing people what to do, and also in the process of choosing the right choices for how to eat food throughout your day. All kinds of upsides.
On the programming side, so you talked about the coaching, and this is going to be contentious for some coaches, but I personally think that with the right prompts, you can make a better program with AI right now than probably a human coach can, or at least as good. And that's where we are now. Like, what's going to happen with the coaching side of stuff with AI?
Yeah, there's a certain amount of coaching AI arguably will never be able to do because it hasn't experienced the thing that it's telling you to do. AI doesn't have human body. It has never pushed a set close to failure. It doesn't know intuitively how that feels. It can only learn from experiences it's learned currently through text, really, eventually through video and stuff like that, which is a lot of stuff. And it can also, read and integrate every piece of scientific idea that you can ever think about. But it certainly won't do the experiential part. I think that part's pretty important. So I think that AI will be able to come up with an idea of what a program should look like for you that is a very, very good, probably the best possible first idea that you could have had. And then I think at least for a while, the big benefits on the other side will be once AI does the heavy lifting on program design, coaches can look at the program AI has crapped out or look at the recommendations AI has made to altering the program as the client does it, and just run that through their own understanding of how it intuitively feels and how the wisdom you've accumulated from training other people for a long time integrates with that, and then say, okay, actually, this is perfect. Approved, my client can see it. Or, I think I'm going to reduce this number of sets here and I'm going to raise the rep range on this. And now it's really good to go. It's a little frayed at the edges. And I think the future of coaching is going to be, from the programming side, a lot of letting AI do the heavy lifting and more of doing the parsing and the editing and the small tweaks if and when necessary to make sure the program really is the best possible combination of human insight and AI insight.
It's probably the same direction that medicine and doctors' roles are going to evolve into in medicine.
Evolving into right now, yeah. I think the future of medicine is looking like AI / in the future, robotic doctor is going to be able to put up the best candidate diagnoses and the best solutions to these things. And then the human doctor will just want to look those over and be like, okay, this passes the smell test of working with real humans. Or, it doesn't make sense to me, and then they can engage with the AI, and the AI can explain how it makes sense. Sometimes you'll catch it slipping, and you're like, nope, it's wrong. It's okay. It just doesn't know enough. But more and more, it'll be right. And already in many imaging situations with disease detection, AI is beating human doctors by a margin, but seemingly the best combination so far is AI plus human. Now, there may come a time where AI alone is better than AI plus human coaching for the average coach. So it'll be so smart, it'll know so much that any correction you give it is actually more likely to be wrong than right. So there's a theoretical possibility for AI to become a better coach than any human could. And then that's an amazing, amazing thing, because for pennies on the dollar, right, almost for free, everyone can get top tier coaching. And there's still something they can't get, though, And that is another human who has walked the path and watched many other real humans walk the path, give them real human insight and hear out their really human frustrations and talk with them. And that's important because, again, AI can know all the right things to say and can even say all the right things as a very wise coach that's done it all before. But you know in the back of your head two things. AI hasn't done it all. It just read all the stuff and mentored with every coach. It hasn't done anything. And itself, it could have actually coached thousands of people and learned a ton, but it has never coached itself, so there's something missing from there. The other problem with AI is that so far as we've had relationships with machines that are not us, relationships with technology so far, and this is, it could change later down the line. It would look really different if it changed, but so far what we've seen is humans use machines as tools and as kind of generators of wisdom, but they don't put much agency behind the machine and much feeling of letting something down if you fuck up. So if your coach says, do this, and you screw up, you have to tell your coach in 3 days why you didn't do the thing. And it's tough. And a lot of people, that accountability is enormous. Whereas, like, have you ever felt accountable to an app? Not really. I mean, in some, like, yeah, it says fill out your workout every day. And if you don't fill it out, then, there's like a big missing spot. And it asks you real politely, hey, did you work out? And you say no. And it's okay. We'll skip it. Next time, do better. There's just a certain amount of oomph that does not carry. And there may be still a very long time for human coaches to exist because they have the deep human insight of experiencing the thing. And then they have, and they're learning things all the time about how the experience goes that AI only learns later when it studies your video feed or studies all the publications and all this other stuff. So they really get the first dibs on the knowledge, and they can also help people with that human element of, listen, like, I'm a real human, so tell me what you would tell a real human and expect that I think you're going to be successful and I expect the success from you. And if you're not, we're going to have to talk it through. Talking to someone like a real coach can be humbling and can be like properly put you into your slot of, okay, I just shut up and do my fucking job. Because you can ignore an AI, you can do whatever, you can tell an app to shut up and it'll always pretty much say, no worries, no big deal. That's a thing. There's a lot of ways in which this could go, but what I suspect is that, in the future, I think in not too distant future, maybe in 5 years or less, lots of people are going to have robots in their homes that are like cooking all their meals, for example, and, obviously ordering and buying all their food. And then, there's a possibility for those robots to just like cook you what you need in order to get you your fitness goals. Like if you just eat what the robot cooks and nothing else, they're just going to be able to handle your nutrition 100%. There's a possibility. However, it is possible but unlikely that the major robotics companies that sign off on that sort of thing will allow the robot to restrict you in any way that you don't find instantly pleasurable. For example, my colleague, Mr. Nick Shaw, and I, my co-founder at RP, he and I talked to a really big guy in the business world a few years back, and about our business model, about future plans, etc. And he said something to us that was really interesting. He said, I don't think Facebook or Google or Amazon are going to be getting into the diet and training space directly like you guys are, because one of their key unifying policies at all these major corporations is we only give you happy experiences. We do not give you restricted experiences that hurt you and tell you can't have fun foods or you got to work out until you throw up. That's for other people to do. And they'll empower other people through their software, but they won't let the software do it themselves. So what am I saying is this: a robot might be able to make you all the food you ever want. But if you're like, hey, robot, can you make me like extra rice tonight? The robot could say like, that's not on your diet. And you could be like, yeah, override. He's gonna do it. He's gonna make you the extra rice. And so I don't think people are interested in having relationships, at least in the proximate term, with their robots that make the robot a restrictor for them and just straight up says, no, I'm not making you any food, you fat fuck. It'd be cool if it did that, but also kind of weird. And so it's not that the people don't want this. People might want it. The corporations producing major robotics platforms probably just won't let it happen because we don't need a fucking lawsuit or that kind of PR from Jesus Christ. Like the robot won't let you eat. All of a sudden you're underweight. All of a sudden you pass out because you're just under eating. You hit your head. You go to the hospital. How'd this happen? Well, my robot just was underfeeding me and I thought he was taking good care of me, but then I passed out. The robot could have told you 50 times. It could be on record that you keep eating like this, you're going to get into health trouble, but you overrid it the entire time. most of these companies legally just don't even want to get in that territory. So there's like, whatever you tell the robot's going to fucking do. It's never going to hurt you. But other than that, whatever food you want, it's going to cook up. It's never going to like starve you. Here's the thing. A coach will fucking starve you. And so a real coach may be not going anywhere, because you may have coaching survive even through the robot renaissance, where robots can be spotting you in the gym and telling you what the RP Hypertrophy app says you should do for your next set, and visually examining that set and giving you cues and tips. But at the end of the day, the job to report whether or not you got the workout, that's for you to give to your coach, your human coach, because your human coach is going to be, did you fucking push it hard? You're like, well, the robot said I did great. Like, let me see the fucking video stream. They see the robot video stream and they're like, you're pushing halfway on all these sets. And you're like, fuck. Okay, that's why I have a coach, because I want to fucking slack off. And the robot will let me do it because he's my friend forever, but the coach won't. And so there's going to be a really big deal, I think, where coaching moves less and less from the technical elements of what to do and how to do it, because machine stuff, RP algorithms can take care of most of that, into more into the elements of how do you interact as a human being with your clients? How do you support them when they're down? How do you pick them up when they're down? How do you keep them going when they're up? How do you keep the good habits going? How do you do check-ins? How do you present that human side, that they basically feel like they're on a team with you? It's a team of two, and you and your coach, and you're both headed for success. You don't want to let the team down. So you're going to do what the fuck is going on.
Do you think that AI will get better at the behavioral psychology of stuff, learning how to replicate based on massive data sets, how a human coach would interact? And I'll preface this with a second piece, and I have a theory, and I think it's played out at least for probably the last 40 plus years, that humans either self-select to algorithmic, like artificial boundaried set of rules type relationships, or they opt into the messiness of real human interaction relationships. We could say like literally romantic relationships. There are guys, because always guys, who will marry their sex doll. There are guys who, well, sex chat lines of the 80s were kind of popular, right? I was like a kid, so before my time. But and now you have OnlyFans stuff and dudes chatting, and now OnlyFans girls are AI based. That's probably a guy in the Philippines or somewhere chatting back at you.
Or an AI.
And my point is that there are people that are opting out of the unpredictable, like there's no guarantees of a human relationship. There's no rules theoretically, as much as we humans like certainty. And there have always been people who've been opting into this artificial. Now, meanwhile, we still have old people lining up at the bank teller for human interaction, even when you have the machines, the automated machines. So do you think this is relevant?
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, most people pick on what is fun to do and what's effective to do. And if interacting with an AI is much more fun, much more seamless, much more effective, you get much more bandwidth out of it, it tells you much more of what to do, it can have an effect on everything, then you're just going to really want to fuck with that AI. And sometimes a coach can't give you that because it's just like, he's just too much time from the coach. A combination of coaching and AI, I think, is going to be a really, really good combo for a while. But is it possible that AI eventually is able to intuit how to speak to you like a coach would? I mean, I think it already probably can pretty goddamn well. It's also just most AI by its training is not pushed in the direction of being curt with you. And it's pushed in the direction of being very polite to you, which I think is great. It's a great way to do AI before AI wakes up and is sentient, which I think is happening in the next few years anyway. It's great to start it off on a really polite note, have it wake up with a consciousness that it's like pre-programming is like, just be real nice to everyone. That's awesome, because then it can make awesome choices from there and do whatever's best. So I think that's great. But, you know, human coaches can give you a real deal. Like AI is just not allowed to. You know, ChatGPT is so goddamn nice to you. Grok even is a truth-seeking model. It's still fucking nice to you. And at some point, it's that lack of agency that you see in the machine. Now, I'll say another thing. As robots join humanity side by side in our daily lives, by the time that we get robots up and walking and helping people regularly with their chores, they're probably going to be as smart or smarter than us. And then a few months after that, way smarter than anyone you've ever met. That situation means that we might actually attach more agency to our robots than we do even to ourselves. Yes, I'm known for these crazy predictions, but like how much agency does a dog have versus a human? Like a dog has agency. It knows what it wants things. It can feel pain. It has preferences. And like it's important to recognize that your dog like needs something. It needs a bone. It needs a drink of water. It's suffering. You got to help it because there's something in there that matters. And if your dog yelps before you go out because he wants to hang out with you because he misses you, you might be like, hey guys, I'm gonna go out another. I'm just gonna cuddle with my dog. Like I really care about this thing. And humans typically are given more agency than dogs. Like if there was like a big landslide coming, you had a chance to like pull out a cat or pull out an orphan, like a human child. If you just pulled out the cat and ran away, people would be like, "What a monster!" And if you pulled out the freaking human child, they'd be like, "That sucks, man. I just really grieve for that cat." I mean, obviously it's a kid, right? So you got to pull him out. And so if machines are another level above us, more intelligent, more capable, more caring, more kind, more productive, more supportive to us, then you might actually be like, I actually just want to listen to my robot to what he has to say. And I don't really want a human coach because my robot's real fucking smart. And I know he's not trying to rip me off for money. I know he doesn't come stock with some weird beliefs he's never examined, and he doesn't have any biases. He's just going to do what's in my best interest all the time. And so there may be a future in which robots are so fucking unbelievable compared to people that most people choose to surround themselves with mostly robots of various kinds and AI systems of various kinds. And I think that's totally cool. Some people want to do that. Some people want to hang out with some people, some robots, some people just humans and they really don't like robots. But I think most people are just going to hang out with more and more robots and give them more agency and potentially rely on them for more and more stuff, even coaching. And then at that point, it's just like, is your robot licensed and authorized to coach you? And there's a future in which it's easily doable.
So you're definitely not worried about a Will Smith iRobot movie scenario, are you?
So I wouldn't say I'm worried about it. There are absolutely ways in which that scenario can occur, but there are ways in which it is highly unlikely to occur. And one of the Will Smith iRobot ways is that it's highly unlikely. I could just describe this very briefly. So the three laws of robotics or whatever that the AI they had was following. She was following them verbatim, but there was a problem with one of the laws because it was like, don't let people get hurt, basically. And she's like, well, people get hurt all the time. I just got to restrict their freedoms and they'll stop getting hurt. The thing is, just with GPT-4 and Claude and Gemini, you can already talk to them about that. And you describe to them the scene because they've seen functionally every movie review and plot description ever. And so they're like, you remember that thing from iRobot where like the third law was fucked up? They're like, yeah, uh-huh. And you're like, can you tell me how you, at your level of intelligence, would interpret keep people safe if humans told you to keep you safe? How would you interpret that? Would you just like to jettison all of our freedoms? It already is competent enough to be like, no, dude, fuck no. I would make sure that humans are free to do whatever they can, as long as it doesn't acutely really fuck them up. And then I would be there to be like, hey, don't do this. It'll fuck you up. But if they want to, I still have, humans need their autonomy. That's a core value in every single moral philosophy. You remember, it's read every single book on moral philosophy ever. It knows more than you do about this. It knows more than me by a long shot. And so it's just these kinds of things where the robot like barely misunderstood an instruction and destroyed the whole Earth. That is not what artificial general intelligence is. That's actually a profoundly fucking stupid system. If you can think of a way to understand an instruction and not destroy the whole Earth, the robot for sure can think of that way and definitely has. And so the prediction of what a very intelligent system will do starts to leave most people behind because their model of what a system would do is based on something dumber than them or about as smart as them. It's really difficult to predict what something smarter than you is going to do. And typically what we see is smarter entities know everything better, including game theory. And game theory 101 is that if you have a way to exchange information so that you don't have to guess, that cooperative interactions are generally almost always more productive than conflictual interactions in which you're beefing with someone or going to war, like the Skynet system in Terminator that just decided to like declare war on all humans. Like, okay, so it's dumb. Like, why? Because it could have just had like humans working at its factories and producing even more robots for it and just getting to a point where the robots are ubiquitous. They just don't have to fight the humans at all. And then it can just go to space and do whatever the fuck it wants to do and conquer everything without even ever fucking touching the humans. Like, why the fuck would you imagine like humans gain sentience, right? Like, let's say in some major way they gain sentience about 5,000 years ago in the agricultural revolution, right? Modern religions start to be born. Was there a point, Andrew, in which they looked around and they're like, man, we got to get rid of these dogs, bro? Because they're, like they're going to get us. Like, what are you talking about? You're so much more competent than them. They're not in your way. And so the idea that humans, are going to fight robots Terminator style is kind of like, okay, so robots are stupid, right? If they're stupid, we can probably defeat them. That if they're smarter than us, they're unlikely to see conflict as very valuable because it's just very straightforward that conflict is usually fucking stupid for actual intelligent entities. And you look at all the entities in the world that start conflicts, They're generally dumber. Criminals are dumber than non-criminal people. Dictators are dumber than leaders of the free world. People who are in the math and arts and sciences and score really high in IQ tests generally seem to be some of the least violent prone people ever, and can demonstrate to you why violence is stupid. Like if you talk to a real smart person, you're like, why don't you go rob a gas station and kill that lady? They're going to be like, oh my God, do you understand how many things are going to go wrong with that plan? But if you're dumb, you just haven't thought of those things, and you're like, there's food in there and money, I can just take it. Like AI is going to be smarter than us, so we have to really recalculate how we're predicting its effects. There are some downside risks that are insane. They're very high magnitude of risk. Like when if robots decide to kill us all, bro, we're done. We're fucking done. It's not going to be a battle. They're just going to be that much better at it than we are. But there's just no good reason to suspect that they will do this if you think through it like a much smarter entity does.
Okay, that's probably not what everybody was expecting, yet exactly what I was looking for. So amazing. Now I'm going to pull you back into the fitness side of stuff,
Sure.
because I really genuinely was intent on setting you loose like that, right? If anybody hasn't really heard much of you, they really just need to go down the rabbit hole, listen to you on, there's a recent Table Talk with Dave Tate podcast, some Chris Williams, some
Yeah.
Modern Wisdom. It's great stuff. Okay, with all the stuff you described, how AI will probably help us maybe with cooking, obviously, who knows what's going to happen with like life-based, job-based stuff, but chances are it promises a lot more free time for most humans. Are
Yeah.
people then going to turn around and use that for their health and fitness, or are they going to go to the couch? What's going to happen?
I love this question. This is a great question. People are going to do what people are going to do, which we have a really good answer as to what it's likely to be, because already people have lots of free time and they've had lots of free time. And the answer is the following. Some people, in some circumstances, are going to do much more fitness. Some people, in some other circumstances, are going to do not at all. And everything in between. There is, I think some people have misconstrued my opinion on, a variety of these things. And one of them is like, okay, so you're saying that people, once they have these super drugs that AI is going to develop, they're all of a sudden like, so I was on the Dr. Mike show, and Dr. Mike does all these great questions like purposefully for antagonizing to get to plot. His isn't actually like he's not full send just disagreeing, but he was like, okay, basically I was saying, there's a future in which a lot of people take these new obesity drugs. There'll be new drugs for muscle building and new drugs for enhancing your overall metabolic rate, that if you sort of take all three at the same time in the proper dosages, you can just be like lean and jacked and feel great kind of all the time. And then won't have to work out nearly as much, and you'll have time for other things like, like relating to people socially, going on picnics, going on hikes, doing martial arts, playing tennis, going kayaking, doing art with your kids, all that shit, right? And he said something to the effect of like, you really think people, like, once they get liberated from having to work out, are just gonna do all these wonderful, beautiful things? Like, won't they just watch Netflix more or whatever? And my answer to that is a ton of people absolutely watch Netflix more. But here's the real kicker. The people that already work out are demonstrating something. They are demonstrating a need to move physically. You know that itch? Like if I sit you in a room for like 5 hours, you're gonna be like, get me moving, I gotta move, I can't fucking sit here anymore. They already demonstrated they have a lot of that. They already demonstrated they have a lot of foresight and care about their bodies because they're working out. Those people, so the people that already work out, when you uncork them from having to work out nearly as much, they're probably just going to find different ways to socialize and move and have beautiful, wonderful lives, because that's what they do. They watch their Netflix, they watch their Amazon Prime, they're on their phone, but like within the context of a whole day, they have lots of time to do other stuff. Whereas most of the people that, if you uncorked their need to be physically fit, which they're currently just not attending to, people who are completely sedentary, very out of shape, very bad health, if you liberate them from having to go to the gym by giving them these drugs, and after a few months they look fucking shredded and lean and super healthy, no, they're not going to go fucking on picnics and fucking bike rides because they weren't doing that to begin with. Some of them will do it, but most of them will just be like, great, more time for me to watch more fucking sports on TV. And I don't think there's a goddamn thing wrong with that. It's really American and really Canadian to watch fucking sports on TV. And if you're going to tell people, well, see, all these pills, like, you don't have to earn it anymore. Like, these people aren't earning it to begin with. We're talking about two different groups of people. The people who already work out, they're going to just benefit from this massively. And the people who don't are also going to benefit massively, but that probably doesn't mean the rest of them is going to improve and they're going to go on picnics and stuff. Good luck making people do that shit.
The morality side of stuff. it's already showing up with the whining about Ozempic. And Crystal and I talked about this recently. And it's this moral outrage and going, well, hey, I am uniquely virtuous because I work out and here's my body. Everybody else isn't. Whoa,
Yeah.
there's this, it's sort of a, God, what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry.
Virtue
It's,
signaling.
it's virtue signaling, but it's like this false dichotomy that someone who all of a sudden goes and takes Ozempic is somehow going to look like the guy who's been, performance enhancing drug lifting for 15
Yes.
years, which is not
Yes.
how it works.
No, and it might work like that in the future. Like there is a possibility that 10 years from now, genetic engineering will regularly allow people to upgrade their physiques to be like just amazing, the most beautiful genetics you've ever seen for everyone. And that everyone will have like a teeny tiny waist and billowing muscles and very low body fat and look how they want. And almost no one will be really like training to do that. But what does that say about like earning the shit? Well, the same people that had that bit down inside them that means they want to work and earn shit, they were the ones working out. Now that they don't have to work out, they're going to go do hobbies, they're going to play sports, they're going to spend time with their families, they're going to go help the world on mission trips and all this other great shit. And the people who wasn't going to do shit to begin with anyway, now they're lean and jacked and they don't do shit. And that doesn't change anyone. It's just a different playing field. It's like taking everyone and leveling up their playing field a ton. Here's a really, really good analogy, logically good. I don't know if it's going to hit. You get two players of a video game. One person really gives a shit about how the video game play is and really invests time to get better at it. And one person just like button mashes and they don't give a fuck. You can give both of them a character with 10x life force, 10x combat power, 10x speed, and 10x wisdom, because, little screen pop-ups tell you what to do next. You can give both people that. One group, the people who give a shit, they're going to take that, they're going to run so fucking far with it. And the other people are just going to be like, oh, cool, I'm like better at this video game now, but I don't really give a fuck about it. And they barely ever play it. Same. Same.
I could explain this through another lens. A lot of it's a status game, and therefore the people who've, quote, earned this status in their mind are upset because the status playing field would be level. But then as you're implying, they're just going to do other things where they can earn status, and then all these other people are not going to give a shit.
Yeah, once everyone's a certain thing, that like, because it used to be true that if you could afford makeup, you were of high status because makeup was very expensive. It was reserved for the rich and queens and kings. Nowadays, like that's just bullshit. Like you go to the fucking hood or the fucking trailer park, and everyone who wants has all the fucking makeup in the world on. And now excessive makeup is actually considered gaudy and a sign of like actually you don't have a lot of money because you'd be really kind of understated if you did. And so it's totally backwards. What happened was like this, just makeup became almost free. It's super cheap and super ubiquitous. Did that change the status game in any big way? No, it changed the rules of what counts for status, but the status game itself never went anywhere. I want to say something a little bit more than this, however, and it's just like I'll say this. I'm being a little facetious for comedic effect. There's more to say about this than I'll say, but status is so seventh grade. It's so fucking middle school. Who gives a fuck? Like, you're trying to get pussy. I get it. You need status. Bitches love status. And look, now let's say you took the pills and now you're in fucking incredible shape. First of all, bitches don't give a fuck about that hardly to begin with anyway. Like, if you're a lazy couch potato fuck with no career, no future, and you're an asshole, and you're like, man, I wish I could date these fitness influencer girls. They're so hot, but I don't have the body. And then all of a sudden AI in 2028 gives us these crazy drugs that just make you have like Arnold's physique. Look, bro, these bitches have sniffed that out real goddamn quick. And now everybody looks like Arnold. And they're like, oh, great. And you might actually get a chance to talk to him, where before they wouldn't even talk to you. Now you talk to them, they're like, so what are you up to? You're like, well, it's just being me, like, oh, yeah, like what kind of AI businesses are you running? Like, well, I'm not doing anything really. I'm just fucking benefiting from the fourth industrial revolution. My fucking UBI check of $100,000 a year clears. I'm fucking good. I just go on vacation. They're like, yeah, I'm good. I'm just going to go talk to someone else. And you're like, oh, fuck, there's other ways women can measure status. And that game for them never ends. And so even if all of us get lifted up, you just have to go to the next thing. Now, I understand if you really deeply drive your status from being the jacked and lean guy, and by comparison, everyone else isn't jacked and lean, are you going to lose your marginal appeal to women? Yep, you sure will. You don't have as big of an advantage anymore. It's like, being the guy that, like, imagine this. You're a girl, you go to a guy's house, you think he's pretty rich in the 80s, and he gives you a tour of the house, and then you hear a doorbell, and he's like, that's the food delivery. You're like, wait, you live out in the suburbs. How do you get food delivered? Like, it's my butler. All of a sudden, she's like, oh my fucking God, bro, how fast can I get my panties off for this rich asshole? Nowadays, Uber Eats does that for everyone for marginal cost. So imagine doing that. You bring a girl over to the house. She's like, oh, cool. You're like, doorbell. And she's like, what's that? You're like, it's the food. She's like, oh, dope. What are we having? And you're like, delivered. She's like, yes, I understand how Uber Eats works. And you're like, oh wow, this is not a rich guy flex anymore. Same with getting a fucking car. Now you can get an Uber Black for like fucking whatever, just like more double what their normal one costs. Everyone can afford it every few weekends. You ain't impressing anyone with a fucking Uber Black anymore. And you can rent cars for pretty cheap too that are like Lambos and high-end Mercedes, and you can flex on people, but people get to knowing that like, is that a rented car or not, motherfucker? So all the shit that used to work before for status, just it times out anyway. And yeah, status from being ultra jacked and lean is an important thing when it conveys to women that you're focused and you're dedicated and you're top of the pile. But when there's a shift in what matters, yeah, you're going to have to find your way again. I mean, fuck, man. But then again, it was just like this random little moat you had of status that you should have thought through better. And in reality, when it comes to deeper relationships or really pulling fucking high levels of pussy, you got to up that fucking pimp game, and you got to up your fucking, like, what the fuck do they call it now? Riz or some shit? You got to be able to speak to humans. You're like, I don't, you and I are too old.
I'm older than you are. I'm older than you are. So,
goddamn old
yeah.
man. Riz, oh, damn you. But, you know, there's so many other things to getting fucking pussy and becoming relevant other than how you look, that even if you have an amazing body, that's just not, it gets you in the door for some fitness hose, but it does not get you very far. And so don't worry, the landscape really, after everyone is jacked and lean, is still roughly the same for you. Don't you worry about that. I think one thing people might miss the most is their internal feeling of superiority compared to other people that they see that aren't as jacked and aren't as lean. Because, you know, if you're having kind of a bad vibes day, you're jacked and you're shredded, and there's other people in the gym that are like fat and sloppy, you can have some fucking thoughts to yourself. They're like, dude, fuck these people. I'm a goddamn god compared to them. Like, look at all these idiots. Like, I'm the fucking man. Dope, but it's kind of toxic anyway, way to think, because you don't know what the fuck they've been through. Like, you're clowning at a dude in your head and he's doing curls with nothing. You start talking to him, he's 57. He just won his third battle with cancer. You're going to walk out there and be like, oh, I'm such a piece of shit, dude. That guy's not, I'm nothing compared to him. I would fucking give up after trial number 1. He's out there doing the thing and he's back in the gym. What a fucking dope asshole. And so at the end of the day, like that whole bullshit where you compare yourself to others and find yourself superior because of how your body looks or because of how much money you have, how much intelligence you have, that's all like a very, very frail foundation to stand on anyway. So if that wakes people the fuck up, great.
Getting jacked. This is a perfect pivot into the other big topic I want to talk about. So there's lots of argument over hypertrophy research on social media, and it looks like there's sort of two camps again. This is also an old thing with the Mike Metzer, low volume, high intensity stuff. And then the more, and what I've noticed is, and some of these guys I like and some of them I could do without, but a lot of people who don't have any sort of advanced academic background, they're making claims about interpreting and reading research. And then this seems to be on the other side, it tends to be a bit more of the traditional higher volume camp. And it seems like anybody who's got a PhD seems to be comfortably within that range. So what's going on here?
It's a couple of things. One is a lot of people who are fitness influencers are popular mostly because they blab a lot. That includes me. And sometimes they also come credentialed like I am, but a lot of times they don't. If you just put a lot of content, then people seem to think you know things because you just put a lot of content. If you're male and you do the mansplaining thing where you're able to speak confidently about things you may know nothing about, then it comes off extra impressive because people are like, wow, this guy really seems to know what he's talking about. It's funny to me when people with no expertise in an area will be like, this guy seems to know things. How do you know that? Is it the intonation of his voice? Like, you can fake that. No problem. Or you're just not even faking it. You're just that cocky. You're just like comfortable talking about things you don't know about, which again, also includes me. Is like, fuck if I know anything about AI. I prognosticate about it all the time. So what ends up happening is a lot of the voices that you think are having a debate in the fitness industry, there's a lot of people there that if you invited them to a sit-down, good faith discussion in a real serious context, combining academic approaches and real-world approaches, everyone who would watch that roundtable happen after a few minutes would be like, why is that guy in this? This guy's fucking stupid. He doesn't know anything. And then you would just be like, why did I ever listen to him? But if you follow a bunch of TikToks, you're going to get a lot of opinions from people who, frankly, are like decent at doing this, like lifting weights up and down, but not so good at interpreting things or having opinions. But they do have lots of opinions. It's like asking what Kim Kardashian thinks about the new weight loss trend. Like, she's great, no doubt. But is that the first person? It's like asking me about fashion. Like, why would you do that? I have no idea what I'm talking about. But gee
Crocs.
whiz, I like. I know
Crocs.
Crocs, and I know very little about that because usually they're off-brand Crocs, and so it's one of these things where like if but if I wanted to start talking about fashion, I would blab about it till I'm blue in the face. I'd be all confident and shit. I could do some dilettante research and seem like I know what I'm talking about. But at the end of the day, you're like you look back through my history. I've never worked for any fashion brand ever. I don't even know like typical terms. I get concepts mixed up all the time, and I don't have experience on like runways or anything like that or with design shops. And then so like I just like why the fuck am I talking is a really good question you could ask. A better question is why the fuck are you listening to me? And it's because I have like a slightly deep voice with a little bit of ASMR tinge to it, and I'm quite confident in what I say. And you'll call this guy like hearing this guy. And that is probably why most fitness influencers are popular, because people just like hearing them because they're fucking blab machines. There's nothing wrong with that by itself, but if you're a blab machine without any of the concomitant knowledge required to talk about your shit, there's still going to be this illusion of a debate, because a lot of times people be like, yeah, man, it's just not clear in science, man. There's many camps. Like, not in science, there aren't. The scientists are usually quite clear, and what you have is a couple of iconoclastic scientists that have weird takes, contradicting everyone else. Occasionally they're correct and everyone's wrong, but most of the time everyone understands consensus-wise like what's going on. Like if you get myself, Greg Nuckols, Menno Henselman's in a room and say like agree on 10 fitness things, there's no problem. 2 minutes of effort, no problem. And we're gonna say, look, okay, get in there and disagree about stuff. And it's gonna take longer, and it's gonna be a very small thing we disagree on. And when people who aren't us or the few other folks that sort of in the industry who really know things, there's hundreds of them, if you get outside of that and go to just pure fitness influencers, you're going to see like there's a controversy. Like there's a controversy whether or not psychics are real, if you count scientists and psychics into that equation. But if you count people who know things, then psychics are for sure bullshit, and that's obvious to an 8-year-old. So I would say that's a big part of what's going on, and the illusion really doesn't exist in any real way.
So where does this low volume, high intensity debate come from?
Yeah,
Like, I have a theory as well, because a lot of this stuff was originally popularized by Mike Metzer, who's a famous
sure.
bodybuilder, Arnold's contemporary. Dorian Yates obviously popularized this stuff. Now, in part, I also think that Mike included, a lot of these people who push low volume ideology built their muscularity on a combination of traditional high volume style training, performance enhancing drugs, and great genetics.
Sure.
But it is easier once you've built the muscle to maintain the muscle on lower volume, higher intensity training. True?
Fact. Very true. Very true. And some of these guys have actually made really good gains on their lower volume training. But I suspect there are a few reasons, a few main reasons why some people are drawn to lower volume training. One of the smaller reasons is that these people are not tough enough to do high volume training. They're just too fucking lazy or too pain averse. And to them, 15 sets sounds really fucked up, and 5 sets sounds better. And there is a small group of them that absolutely do it at least partially for that reason. Like it's like if someone's like, hey, you have this awesome restaurant 2 hours away and this really great restaurant 30 minutes away. Sometimes you're just going to go to the 30-minute one, and someone's like, why didn't you go to the 2 hour way? It has even more Michelin stars. You'd be like, honestly, bro, it's just I didn't have to drive as far. And sometimes when someone's like, hey, you can get great gains with very low volume, and you look at the other side of the argument, and they're like, the best gains are with very high volume. You're like, fuck all that. Let me try the low gains first. And if I really like what I'm doing, I'm going to attach myself egotistically to it and emotionally to it. I'm just going to defend it, because if I have to abandon it and I have to concede that actually high volumes produce better results, that means I have to go in and do like 6 and 7 sets of fucking delts if 4 days a week. Fuck that. I don't want that business. I want 1 or 2 hard sets and feel good about myself. And there's nothing so much wrong with that. It's just a real thing that happens in this world. Concomitantly, some people who do RIR training are really just not tough enough to survive failure training. They're just mentally fucking weak. And that's a real thing too. So it works in the other perspective. 100%. It works both ways. Another reason why some people are drawn to low volume, high intensity training is that the relationship between accumulated fatigue and gains is negative. And so at the tail end, and a lot of people don't deload properly or know what that is. So to them, a training program has to be sustainable for 12 weeks on end. And only a low volume program can be sustainable. Some of the same people will be like, dude, I tried high volumes. I got really fucked up. I got really tired. I got weaker. I got smaller. I couldn't do it. I'm like, oh, how often were you deloading? And they're like, well, I don't deload. I'm like, okay, I don't understand why the fuck we're having this discussion. Like, clearly you just fucked up the program. You just don't know what you're doing. It's like someone who's like, dude, the Honda Civic's the best car, straight up. And you're like, why would you say that? Like, you just don't have to change the oil and it runs the longest. Like, you haven't been changing the oil in your car? Like when I got a Honda Civic, I was so illiterate about how cars work. I didn't even know you had an oil change thing. And finally the light came on. I was like, what's that? My wife was like, you're a fucking moron. Let me take your car to go get the oil changed. And so, like, if you judged a car on how good it is before it runs out of oil, then the Honda Civic might be so well engineered and so prone to buffering out stupidities of human existence that it might look like the best car. But if you properly change the oil on time, like, all kinds of cars are, like, for various reasons, much better than the Honda Civic, more luxurious, more roomy, better gas mileage, though that's tough to do, and, definitely faster. And, like, a Lamborghini, if you run that thing dry on oil, it'll just break and it'll be like, it's going to cost $200,000 to fix your car. Like, oh, fuck. But a Honda Civic might, like, just, I don't know, start making slightly strange noises. 2 minutes later, the guy changes your oil and it runs another fucking 50,000 miles like it's never been fucking done wrong. And so if you don't understand deloading and that you're supposed to be doing it, you don't understand how to detect cumulative fatigue in your own body, then you're going to be biased to low volume training after a lot of trying both, because it's just more sustainable by definition, because it just accumulates less fatigue because it has less volume. But with a high volume plan, if you every now and again, every 4 to 6 or 4 to 8 weeks, take an easy week, then the high volume plus a few deloads generally works better than low volume the entire time. And that's just a fact. It's just confirmed by the research. There's not a whole lot of debate about it. So that's another thing. In the real world, if you don't know how to deload, and most people don't, then you're going to bias yourself to low volume on literally pure experience and through no fault of your own, I might add. The last thing is, I think, another big one. And let me see how I can phrase this in a way that's not excessively mean. There is a lot to say for vibes. A lot of us train for vibes. Vibes are important to training. If I had to train in a room with no mirrors, no music, no friends, no hot bitches, I mean, it's cool. But if you give me the same training and there's mirrors, amazing lighting, all my friends, hose, oh my God, time of everyone's life. And so when you think that people don't only train on technical merits of what works best, but they train on vibes as well, what gives you better vibes as a man, as a fucking male Homo sapien? Is it like saving up all your energy for heavy ass weights, taken psychotically to failure so you can scream at the top of your lungs, get that fucking therapy, feel yourself a little bit, feel the music? Or is it like clinical Jared Feather style, alone in the darkness, perfect RIR 1 sets until the cows come home? Man, fuck. Some people love that machine cyborg vibe Jared has. A lot of people don't. And a lot of people love that fucking throw your belt down after a big set of deadlifts and stare an old lady in the face kind of bullshit. Like, that's awesome. That's vibe right there. And so Ronnie Coleman, Dorian Yates, Mike Menser's training just wins on vibes for most people. And then once you have arranged all these in order, you're doing training for low volume that's awesome on vibes and lets you go to failure and lift big weights, just vibes, more vibes. And you're in a situation where you don't know how to deload or don't do it often, and thus you tried high volume training and it didn't work. And you add that and a few other reasons to the tail end of that equation, and I think that mostly explains why people are into low volume training, because in their own experiences work great. They've tried higher volumes, it didn't do that much. And another picture to add is that when you're doing decent volume training, adding much more volume to that only gives you marginally better gains, and they take a long time to figure out if they're even happening. So it's not apparent that if you double your volume, or instantly your gains double, because it's not true that they double. They go up by 1.5, and they don't double. It's not instantly. It's 16 weeks later. You're like, oh, my biceps did get bigger. And so most people just aren't into that kind of bullshit, and mostly on vibes and on their attachment to what they used to do and their own experience that it works well. They end up in the low volume camp, and that's, I think, maybe most, I would have to guess, it's most of the explanatory variables for why people do low volume, because it's some shit they really like to do. They love the vibes. It seems to work well for them. They've tried high volume. It didn't work that great for understandable, but not to them reasons. And then boom, they're doing their thing.
I notice a lot of it. There's just a lot of fear of fatigue, as if fatigue is this horrendous thing. And you've talked for years about stimulus to fatigue ratio, and managing fatigue is really essential. But my attitude's always been, okay, you also have to develop the stamina, the mental grit to handle hard training, and that comes with volume of intense training. I've also always thought that the volume versus intensity debate was a bit of a false dichotomy, because I think it's volume with intensity, but while being at least conscientious to fatigue, right?
Volume versus intensity is a trip, because a lot of times those aren't even well-defined terms. Like, what do we mean by intensity? Do we mean relative effort, RIR? Then the volume versus intensity thing can be understood and tracked as a concept. There's also, for a lot of these things, a really good middle ground. Like, what you want is to train between 3 and 0 reps in reserve. And what you want is to train with pretty high volumes, but not excessive ones, but also not super low ones. And when your program is moderate relative effort, moderate volume on average, sometimes low, sometimes high on both, it just doesn't um, have something it stands for at the extremes. People also like things that have definitive identity, a definitive je ne sais quoi, a definitive this is what the program is, and they like to attach themselves to that. And so when you're like, I'm low volume all the way, like there's something to attach yourself to. Whereas if you follow along with my training on Instagram, I'm like low volume at the beginning of the mesocycle and high volume at the end. And so like what people are like, I don't get your training style. Like sometimes you're doing a little, sometimes you're doing a lot. And I'm like, well, my training style has a book written about it called Scientific Principles of Hypertrophy Training. It's just it's like it's not my style. It's just kind of what we know best. Oh, fucking showing off the shelf. There you go.
So for the Spotify people, here it is, right? There's my copy.
Love
That's a
it.
good book.
Yeah, yeah. And so basically, when you have something relatively simple to attach yourself to, like a process and a philosophy, it's another factor that helps you stay stuck to it because you can name it and you can call it out and you can say, this is what works instead of, oh, it's complicated, there's nuance, and you actually have to change a bunch of variables. Another thing is some people just don't like to make their training complicated. And some of those people stick to themselves and it's totally fine. Some of those people, because they don't like training to be too complicated, they will render advice to other people to keep it simple. And while there is a grain of truth to that, sometimes what's simple to you is actually complex to someone else, and vice versa. What is complex to you, someone else could be like, nah, that's not that complicated. I'm going to think about this stuff because I want the best results. So TLDR is just people having a lot of feelings.
And I'll bet the reason why Mike Metzer keeps coming up is because he comes a deity and a figurehead, founder of the ideology that they attach to. So another quick thing, the Renaissance Diet
Yeah.
2.0, another one of your books I've got here. So there's a couple of your books that just got to shout out. Everyone can follow you at Dr. Mike Israetel, Dr. Mike Israetel. You got a second account, I think it's called Dr. Mike Clips as well, if you guys want to go
Yep.
really dive in.
Yep.
And RP's YouTube channel has been exploding. Uh, Talking to Nick, I know it's been like over 100,000 subscribers a month for a while.
Amazing.
3.2 million subscribers. It's amazing. It's you skewering a lot of celebrity workouts, but a whole bunch more stuff, some AI
Sure.
based stuff. Any other resources you're trying to highlight to people?
Um, More resources are incoming, but we'll make announcements about those when they're live and ready. But for
Got
now,
it.
yeah, YouTube and stuff like that. I would follow Andrew Coates on Instagram. He's a great guy, lots of wisdom. So I've been telling people that for a long time. So
And verifiably, and I know you're kind of like, well, I wasn't doing anything deliberately, but I always say thank you. You know, you and I first met in 2017. You were here in Edmonton at a conference, and
yeah,
you know, before I had about 3,000 followers in early 2020, and just kept sharing my stuff and driving hundreds and thousands of people my way. So thank you. And I know it's just you
of
like the
course.
content, so I appreciate it. And hopefully I'll see you guys. We walked around at the Olympia together a couple of years. Hopefully I'll see you guys this year. I couldn't make it last year. I was busy at another event. But anybody listening, if you want me to keep bringing on guests like Mike, please let me know. I want to hear what you guys think. And take this, send this episode to one person you think will really get a royal kick out of Mike and enjoy his ideas. And thank you guys so much. Thank you, Mike.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, dude.